How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Ganji. Welcome to a live episode of Tier Talk. Kind of impromptu. There'll be some fun. Couldn't think of a topic. I have Connie and Russ, two excellent guests, and we just couldn't come up with a topic today. So we said, you know what? See what the audience wants to discuss. So as they start to come in, we'll answer whatever questions they have. But just real quick, just want to go over my sponsors. We have American Military University. If you guys are looking for a degree, seek higher education, please check out American Military University. They're very supportive of what we do in corrections, also very supportive of what we do here on Tier Talk. So guys, looking to get a degree, bring experience back into the classroom, please check out American Military University. We also have my book, Inmate Manipulation Decoded. That's available on the market. Sales are doing well. In the month of May, so far within the 11 days, I sold 40 copies. They just seems to be being used a lot in academies, which is what it was written for. So it's good that people are making use of it. So guys, if you haven't gotten the copy yet, please do. Link to that is in the description. My other book, I wrote the second book. I'm going to pull it from Amazon. So if you guys got the original copy, well done. That was now the limited edition. I don't know if that's going to be worth more, but the book got picked up by a professional publisher, 360 Blue Media. If you guys get a chance, check out their website. They got a lot of good books there, but my book will be up on theirs. They're fixing it up a little bit, going to finalize it, and then we'll do the orders for the new and improved book through Blue 360 Media. So if you guys get a chance, check out the website, and then my book will be up there probably within a few months. So I'm excited for that. And one last thing, guys. Sorry, that's the book. We have the leadership training course, which is doing very well. It's $75 for the first part. It's an on-demand webinar, so you guys decide when you guys want to use it. I'm getting some feedback now. They say get ready to get your pen and paper out. There's a lot of notes. Second part will be building relationships with the people you lead. But if you guys are interested in ordering that webinar, the email below, nassahs22@gmail.com. That's the email you would email, and they will go ahead and give you the information and how to go ahead and get that course, that online webinar. All right, so let's get my guests. First, we got Connie. What's up, Connie? You're muted. Let's unmute you.
Hello.
Hey, we got people coming in.
Good to be back on.
We missed you. I got Alicia B here, Don Spivey from Washington, Chris Mahat, Eric Guest. I know they're missing you, Connie. Where you been? Oh, first off, how you feeling? I know you're a little under the weather.
Yeah, I'm feeling okay. I'm coming back together. I know I look a little out of sorts. You've got me up late.
You never look out of sorts, Connie.
Never. Absolutely. And thankfully, you gave me the pretext to make sure like I was up.
Oh, the comedy?
No, when you called me at 9:30.
Oh, so you could splash the water on your face.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Hey, me and Connie actually had a pretty interesting day today. We did a show for some Roku channel. So me and her were being interviewed. And then when we ask, where's this going to be posted? It's Roku. Connie does a research, or they mentioned the website. The website had the word sovereign in it. So, got to talk to my manager on that one. We'll figure it out once it gets released. But hey, Connie, you mind introducing yourself to our audience?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I am Connie Aline. I am the founder and president of the Civilian Corrections Academy. I have worked in the correctional setting since 2000. I started on Rikers Island, transitioned over to Connecticut Department of Corrections in 2012. And I've been doing all things corrections for a little bit of time now. So, it's good stuff. I enjoy when we're able to talk about it and I can stay current on all the stuff that's happening now. Good stuff.
Everybody says hi to you, by the way. Alicia, Kathy loves us both. Don Spivey sends his love your way. And of course, there's our Alicia right there. Always glad to see you. And we also have, by the way, guys, it's a live Q&A. So put those questions in there. So start them rolling because we can't come up with a topic until you guys got those questions. So this is all about you guys today. And we got Russ. What's up, Russ?
Hey, here I am, Anthony. How are you doing?
Hey, Russ, introduce yourself to the audience, and then we want to hear your hey, we got Joe, too. We could have got Joe on. And then we want to hear your story.
I got lots of stories. But yeah, my name is Russ Hamilton. For those of you that don't know me, I am a former and retired correctional sergeant from California Department of Corrections way back in the day, 1980s, San Quentin. Started there, ended up promoting and transferring and then retiring. And then I ended up working for a local county here in California, where we built a brand new juvenile detention facility, the first one built in California in eons. And then I retired again, and now I work for a private company where I am a case manager at a local jail, and we do reentry and rehabilitation work for that jail and for a local probation department.
Yeah. Now, Russ, you said you have an interesting story to share before we get to talking.
Oh, it's not interesting. It's just an irritating story to me because of the way my day started off. And it was just one of those things, we're supposed to have like the big, head honcho was coming down and stuff. And so I'm supposed to be at work early to start with. So the first thing was I get in the car and start heading down the road, and I forget that I left my phone. Not a big deal. Turn around, come back and get it. So as I come back and then I leave again, I notice that there's a grinding sound coming from my brakes. So at the end of all of that nonsense, I had to pull in over at an O'Reilly's and then get a brand new set of brakes. And then 90 minutes later, after all this stuff is going down, I finally did the whole brake job and everything, and was able to get back on the road. And it just really, really sucked. But at the end of the day, I still managed to have a smile on my face, although the start of it was really horrible. But the day prior, the other thing that was really irritating me is my wife and I, we have this subscription to a thing called BattleBox, right? And it's really cool. There's like a lot of, survival gear and little knives and whiz bang things that come along. Well, this one, it had a trail cam on it. And on this trail cam, you can set it up and it will, it will be triggered by any motion, and it will beam pictures of what it's seeing back to you. And I thought, oh, this thing will be really cool, and I'll go ahead and I'll catch my dog outside, and it'll go off of that, and I'll get to see my cat and do all these things. So I set this thing up, and then this morning when I wake up, sure enough, man, there's a bunch of pictures on it. And I start looking at these things, and apparently I have an infestation of these possums that are living under my house right now. And it's horrible. There's tons of them down there. It's like a little circus of these horrible rat-looking things that are cute in a way because they have actual hands and so forth. But at the same time, I know they're destroying things down there. And so now I'm very, very vexed by it. And I'm going to have to get some live traps, some have a heart, humane type traps and take them, miles away to release them again into the wild. So I'm exasperated, and that's really all I got to say. But I just thought, I would tell a story that's different from, the stuff that they usually hear me talking about with regards to prisons and jails and inmates and fights and stabbings and contraband and dope and stuff like that.
Yeah, it gets us out of the normal routine. But we do got some questions. We got people saying the ground. Yeah, guys, share it out because YouTube doesn't give us the notifications for some reason, and Facebook either. We do have a good question that came from Sean Pennington. So, guys, keep the questions coming. But I want to answer something real quick for Eric. Hey, Eric, there's no issues. This year, I have been able to do a lot of conferences. I've been getting a lot of phone calls. One Voice obviously was reaching out to me as well. I'm working on something at my job that is taking up a lot of my time, but it's for the staff, and I really want to be devoted to them. I never had the opportunity like this before to really do something for my agency, and the person in charge has entrusted me with something that I've never been entrusted with before, that I really want to really devote my time to, and actually relates to the question from Sean Pennington. So it's a very small world, but I'm part of a committee called CME. I'm the chairperson of a committee, CEMI, the Committee for Employee Morale and Innovation. And our objective is to lift the voices of staff So it's a process. We have a lot of going on, open house events every month, training. There's just a lot, and I don't want to take away from that for this year. So no, there's no beef, there's no nothing. This is just me finally being given the chance to help the people that I work the closest to. I've never had this opportunity before, and I just wanted to do what I can. This is my legacy. I got 4 years and change left, so I'm planning of what am I going to leave behind. And this kind of relates to Sean's question. It's a small world, I guess. I do have a question, not for me personally, but I've seen officers try to find their voice. Ain't that unique? Whether in the academy or in a facility. And guys, I didn't pay this guy. That's why I know that. I didn't pay him. This is a original. How do I help newer officers to develop their voice in the field? So let's do this. Not just newer officers, but we'll also do newer staff members. We'll keep it fair all around. So let's go ladies first. We'll go Connie, Russ, and then I'll talk about it from my perspective. So Russ, I think that's a great question, right? How do we lift the voices of our staff? And that's a great supervisor right there who wants to see how they could do it best. What would you do?
Is it Connie or me?
No, it's Connie. Connie, you're muted.
Okay.
Yeah, but you said you were talking to Russ, so I thought you were looking for Russ to respond.
Yeah,
No,
he was
guys, this is
looking
late
at
at night.
me
I
while
messed
pointing at you.
I probably even said your name. Guys, I'm sorry, man. So
my
ladies go first. Connie, I apologize. That's on me. Connie, would love your thoughts on that question.
Sure. So I think the first thing is when we solicit the voice of the staff, it really matters. Like if we are intentional and we are going to them to kind of get them to talk about things, right? Because I think a lot of times, one, they think we're not interested. Like we have all the answers, so we don't really care, and that's not the truth. And I think the other thing is sometimes they feel that if, in fact, something they may have said in the past isn't taken into consideration, that it's being dismissed, and that's not necessarily the truth either, right? Because there are times where the staff may bring things forward and there's a process by which we can implement or make changes or address the issue. And when they don't see the results right away from bringing their voices forward, sometimes they feel discouraged to share. So I think a way to kind of help them find their voices is to actually encourage them to speak up and speak out, sort of involve them in those bigger or those higher level conversations. Because I get that sometimes as managers, there are certain conversations, maybe this information only we're privy to. But then there's times that I think in our general staff meetings where we could say, hey, here's something that we were talking about. What do you guys think about it? Right? Because now it is us kind of soliciting their voice and wanting to hear, where they're coming from and what their thoughts are. So that's just what I think about it.
I think that's great. And Russ, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to dovetail, or not really dovetail. I just want to steal some of what Connie said right there. I'm just going to use it as my own, where she said the word solicit, Yeah. And so I really, really like that word. So I said it first at this point. But yeah, I mean, that is the way that you do want to engage your staff, is to actually solicit and, ask for that input and put them in a position where they not only feel free to give that input, but that they have to dig down deep and think about, how are they going to present it? What are the pros? What are the cons? And force them to have to think it through from the position of what is it that we do every day. And what we do every single day is we think critically about the things that we have to do, whether it's a policy we have to implement or a new tactic or an idea, or if we're just even out there just, spitballing on these things. So I think that's, well taken and well formed, the whole idea for, yes, we're soliciting ideas. We're soliciting new tactics. We want to know what you guys think. And we have to be really intentional about that, because it's easy sometimes to unintentionally shut people down, not in an overt fashion, but sometimes we're just struggling ourselves to just try and get through what it is that affronts us on a day-to-day basis. So it pays attention to pay attention.
Yeah. Now, so guys, I agree. Obviously, lifting the voice of staff is important because the most innovation is going to come from the bottom up, from the people that do the job. But it's funny because in order to lift staff's voices, you got to work from the top down. So it's a bottom up initiative, but you got to create the culture from the top down. So I think what we've been trying to work on is first building some trust with our leadership to let them know that we're all working together. If you have leaders that are insecure in their position, they could be a really big obstacle for lifting staff's voices because even a question becomes a challenge. Another thing you want to do is you want to flatten the hierarchy, eliminate some of the layers. So when a message is lifted, it's not filtered, with everybody else's opinion for whatever bias they want to put into it, because that's the hard part. But also I want to add something else. It's an intentional effort from the people that need to do it. Lifting your voice takes a lot of courage on the people, yes, that help lift your voice, but also on the people that have a message. Sometimes people, they say things, and the moment you give them a mic, well, it's like, whoa, guys, you want me to help you? I gave you a microphone. No, don't want my name in it. It's like, well, then this doesn't work. You have a legit message, a legit concern, and I'm going to help you take that concern to the higher up. But the person that's the best to relay that concern is the knowledge worker. The translator can help present the opportunity for it to happen. But then when it goes back down and we go to look to talk to you and people say, well, nope, I don't know what he's talking about, because that's happened.
I think one thing with that, though, is that we can't ignore that we created a culture that prevents people from doing that, right? Like, I know we're in the process of culture change, right? But if someone says, oh, no, I don't want my name in it, right? Something has happened to make that person respond in that manner. And so I think we just want to be mindful that there's some ownership, that we've created this environment where there's retaliation at times, or where that person is ostracized because maybe what they're saying isn't the popular thing, or where that person is kind of hung out to dry and not supported because they brought something forward. So I think there are times where even if the person says no, like, the manager does have to still step up and serve as that go-between to make sure that the voice is still heard, or that the opinion's still out there. But I think the other thing I wanted to add to what you were saying was, in order for us to hear those voices, we have to be close enough to those voices. And a lot of times there's so many layers between the staff and actually getting their voices out there, right? Like, so to your point of being able to flatten the hierarchy, I think it's critical to get close enough to the staff to build a rapport so that they feel comfortable to even let their voices be heard.
Yeah, and I want to add something to that. By the way, we're all on the same page here. So check this out. Titles are tough because titles connect to a reputation. So I could be a great person. I decide to take the title of secretary or commissioner, and I want to implement change, but I'm looked at as the title of how other people have used the title before me. So the reputation of the title is tough, because you could have people in some high positions that want to do good, but they've taken the title of people who misused it, who did it for their own advantages or for their own perks. So it's tough, because I get what you're saying 100%. There's the fact that the people that held that title before were assholes. And now, unfortunately, you want to lift people's voices, but we just don't trust management. So then what happens here, and this is a very smart move from the people in the higher ups who are looking to create a culture. A lot of them, what they do sometimes, I'm talking about good leaders, because there are good leaders in there, they remove themselves from the title briefly, because they know that the title has a negative reputation. So what they do is they want their troops to see them as me first. See me before I put the title on, because I know the moment I put the title on, Joe Schmo that had it before me made a bad name for all commissioners or all secretaries, and now it's like I got when I take the title, I get the reputation of that title. So a lot of people, they want to wear the title, but they know that, that title has caused some harm in the past. That's why I can't get people to lift their voices up. So what they do is exactly what Connie said. They get close to their people, not also just to hear their voices, because that's key. I agree with that 100%, but to also let those people connect to them. I mean, let them see me as me, because at the end of the day, be honest, and we all know this, titles wear thin. It's the person behind the title. So what happens here is I get to know this person, and I'm like, you know what? I trust the person. I'll give my voice to them. But if I'm going to say lift your voice and I remain positional and don't even walk around and get to know you, you're right. People are like, nah, not doing that. Last commissioner was an ass. I'm not doing it again. So it's a lot. So for someone in a leadership position, if you're taking the position from someone who just didn't know how to wield it properly, that maybe they did it for their own perks and benefits, you got to be wary that title has a reputation, and you got to connect to your people if you want to get them to see you differently. Because if you don't, they're just going to connect you with the negativity of that title. What's your thoughts on that, Russ? I thought we could add a little on that, Russ or Connie. Russ first.
Well, yeah, it's it doesn't just have to be the title either. It can just be a sort of a general overall hatred directed toward administrators, or directed toward managers, or just the fact that everyone just kind of gets around and jaw jacks and talks about hey, all of the captains are horrible, all of the wardens are terrible people. And what are guys that really haven't been exposed to those actual people supposed to think? Well, they're just going to kind of generally take it and go along with it, and assume that the people that they trust with their lives on a day-to-day basis are really in the know, and they really know how terrible those administrators and those managers are. So there is a lot to unpack there, but I do really like the way that kind of showcases things where it's the title becomes polluted, rather than the individual who polluted it.
Yeah, well, you know what got me that idea, by the way, to be honest with you? I want to share something with you, because my boy Sean wants to become an FTO. Sean, let me just, this blew my mind. So as I said, I don't really talk much about what I do because I'm still on the job, but having said that, it's a good initiative, and I think it is something worthy of promotion. So again, I'm part of a group I called CME, Committee of Employee Morale and Innovation. And what made me connect to this leader is because she brings you like to her. Like, I mean, even if you say commissioner, she's quick to say her first name. Like she's not title driven. So the funny thing is, when people aren't title driven, I'm drawn to them closer. Where I think if people push titles, it's like, pushes you away. I felt that this person was sincere, vulnerable, and the ideas of what she wants to do with the department is something that always needed to be done, but no one had the courage to do. Because I'm going to tell you something right now, and this goes to Sean, because it is a great question. And I'll have maybe Connie could comment on this too. When you start asking staff to lift their voice, because that's, again, what we're doing, you got to be prepared what comes your way. But I want to add something too, because the first couple of months it's going to be tough because people don't know what concerns could be actionable, so you're going to get a lot of crazy stuff until you can able to narrow it down. But I will tell you, there is a benefit behind this, or with lifting your voice and you start making things turn into action, is that eventually when people build trust, they don't become outcome driven anymore. They're driven by effort. So I'll give you an example. If I trust my leader, I don't wait for the outcome. I know the effort's there. And this way, that trust is a fair trust. It's not dependent on what I can produce. That's another part of the culture that we have to be wary of, is that when you go to lift people's voices, they have to realize everything is an effort. So if you judge leaders by outcomes, especially if they're in positions where they can't control those outcomes, then they just stop trying. But Connie, what's your thoughts? Because that's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think really where we get the buy-in is when there's actually some level of trust there, right? Because they have to trust that once their voices have been lifted, that someone is making the effort. Because a lot of times you don't see the effort that's being made and you are looking for the outcome, right? And so the only way you develop sort of that trust is by developing a rapport with those people. And I think the other thing too, as you talked about it, you know, oftentimes when folks are title driven, there is a level of there's this space between them and the people who are trying to get the message to them.
Yeah.
And so I think the more that we put into practice, like, because I'm not saying we're doing away with the respect and everything that comes with the title, but if you're not wearing that title sort of as the badge of armor, but like I really just genuinely want to get to know people, I think folks would be more open to sharing and communicating with that person because they aren't sort of operating just from a space of this is my title, so talk to me.
Yeah, well, yeah, I like that because that's the other thing. That as I think sometimes titles actually push people away more because it especially if a higher position, you throwing out your title, all it does is let the people underneath think that they feel inferior. So I mean, yes, there's a time and place. Love what Alicia said. Report you know, there's a time and place. You know, if there's an emergent situation, there's concerns and you got to push things forward. But most of the time, that's not really needed, guys, because you keep on leading that way, your title wears thin. Like you want to throw your title around every day, fine. Watch what happens when people no longer respect it, you know, because at that point there, it actually, you know, whatever that fear tactic you're trying to employ winds up actually becoming a bit annoying and degrading. You know, you actually wind up start building an us versus them mentality where, yeah, the fear just caused separation because I want you to fail. Because you're making me feel like shit. And next thing you know, I'm waiting for the day for you to bounce out, you know? And I want to add one more other thing to this when it comes to the voice. Let me just see, because the gentleman here mentioned, I like this too, controlling the tone is very important. Many of us are seasoned and we must remember that we're green at one time. Mentoring in a positive and security focused mindset will either break or make. So we talked about FTO. Sean, I believe, is trying to become an FTO. I want to mention something about field training officers because I think someone else made a good point too. Don Spivey said something that I want to comment on real quick related to FTO. He got my interest with a statement he just said. It was on the bottom here. FTO is nothing more than a quality officer who just wants to ensure new staff know their job and decrease the new hire complacency. Just no title. Okay, I'm going to disagree with that, Don, but let me explain why, because you're right. On the surface, that's what it may seem like. But the FTO, when a person takes the position of FTO, they need to realize that it's more than that because you are the initial point of contact for all new boots that are coming in. I think your job technically is not just to tell them the way, but it's also to show them the way, answer their why, help them build interest into this profession, you know, connect them to the vision, to the things that matter. You know, you kind of mentor them through this profession. For me, I was never an FTO, but I did do a lot of training because there were times where they would just assign you somebody. For me, I love to be able to share my experiences, try to create that impact, you know, show some level of connection to the work being done to something on a higher level, teach the why behind the work. And I think as an FTO, to be trusted in that position, to be able to connect to someone at the beginning of their career where they're most vulnerable and shape their path to kickstart them in the right direction, I think there's no greater position. You know, it's just the timing is right. You can have this excellent influence. So for people that become an FTO and they just kind of want to stand to what it is that's defined, no, I think you got to get involved, active, and understand that you're in a position that matters. And never, I don't care, never underestimate the power of that initial contact through an FTO. It's like the perfect dance. You know, you get someone wanting to teach, connect them with someone that wants to learn, you know, play the music all day, you know. But I'll go Connie first on, you know, the FTO concept, and I want to go to Russell. What's your thoughts on what's your thoughts on what would you expect from an FTO if they worked for you? What would you want them to message? Would you want them to get out?
If they worked for me.
Yeah, so let's say you're the administrator, you know, when you're running the
Okay.
agency and you got your field training officers, what would you expect from them in regards to impacting our rookie staff?
So one, aside from policy and procedure, right? Because I feel like that's a given. I think it's kind of talking them through all of the sort of myths, right? Because we all come in with some preconceived notion, right, of what corrections is, what my role is, what I'm expected to do. And sometimes I think that person who they're first being encountered with is the person who can kind of put them on the right path, right? Like, so if you think, I'm coming here, I'm gonna just make my money and I'm gonna get whatever benefits I'm gonna get, right? Like, I think if the FTO can recognize that in a particular, new boot, right? Like, now is the time to have those conversations that this is not just that, right? Because a lot of times we allow certain comments to just let it be, right? It's not my conversation to have. It's not worth having, but they are the ones who up front can see what people are coming in, what their intentions are. And I know sometimes it can be challenging to have some of those crucial conversations, but I think that person is allowed to set the tone, right? To say like, yeah, that's not what this is about. Or you might not be in the right place. Or here's another thing that this job has to offer in addition to that, right? So I think it's really just showing the way, but putting them on the right path so that they don't come in with the agenda going in the wrong direction right away.
Yeah, and by the way, that's extremely important because that's the main thing is, first off, as the FTO, what's the impression you're giving to the rookie? Because even on this channel, we sell a profession that's going to welcome you. We sell a profession that's really based on a family connection because you really can't sell corrections. There's really not a lot of benefit to this profession. It really is a profession based on servitude. So one of the core things that I've always thought of is you could sell on the bond because there should be a bond. Now, when you get someone coming in believing that exists, and then they go into the academy or they go into the facility and they get pushed away, guys, there's nothing keeping them at that point. I want you guys to know that. And then people complain, well, this rookie left. So yeah, because you didn't embrace the rookie. Hey, Grant, you know what's funny? I know people have to earn each other's trust. I get that. But you're not doing much when you're pushing the person away because that person has to also earn, just like they have to earn your trust, you also have to earn their trust. So I think at some point, I know this may sound crazy, but for me, I live by the thing that mistrust is earned, because at the end of the day, these rookies need you to embrace them because if you don't embrace them, somebody else will. So again, as an FTO, your job is to welcome that person to this profession and let them know no matter what, you got their back. Because to be honest with you, as I said, the only thing right now that I could sell that makes this profession worthwhile is what we always say, got your back here. We're a family. We're a family. And then when they get in the facilities, you got to live by that. And then, you're that first connection. So Russ, what's your thoughts on that?
So, the great thing about, the FTO process is that FTO can take someone and, you really give them the base tools that they need to be a serviceable corrections professional. It would be nice if the FTO, though, also had the ability to make them not just serviceable, but someone who can, take those abilities and tools and stuff to the next level, to kind of, make their own clone of someone who's equally capable of being an FTO. Too often, though, we just get stuck with the process where instead of, cranking out someone who's fantastic, it's kind of we're cranking out people who are just good enough. But I think that the FTO process has gone a long ways toward making much better officers overall. Because there was a time in the day, that's what I had is you just finished the academy and then you just went and hung out with people and did the job and there was really, nothing else there. It was kind of up to you to find a way to, to polish your talents and to find a way to shine if it was possible. And there was none of that FTO stuff going on, except for a few select individuals who stepped up. And even though there was no FTO sort of process going on, they made sure that people got the complete training and the completed outlook on what it means to be a professional corrections officer.
And I got a few questions coming in, guys. I want to get to them. So one, I want to get Miss Hayes. She said a comment, then I want to go to Dante and then go back down to Dreamscape. So Miss Hayes had a good question. She goes, when I have my FTO, sometimes it'll be like two different ones coming in on one shift to tell us certain things, like people jail differently. And I think to shift, it should be one FTO. And I will tell you one thing. Everybody's going to have different ways of how they do things. And I like that in an empowered facility. I mean, there's still consistency in what needs to be done. But as long as what they're doing kind of makes sense, we're not doing it, to make sure, because I definitely want stuff that abide by policy and not bad practices. So grant with me, I'm talking, just go along with me. I'm talking about people that do things in the most effective ways, but they may do it differently. You have to allow some empowerment in how people do their work, I guess, as long as it's effective, right? But with that said, yeah, there could be different ways people do things. And when you're new, the problem is you don't have a foundation or a baseline to compare what is right or what's wrong, because everything's still developing. So where do you find the consistency to kind of say, well, what works best? I mean, it's sad to say, but sometimes it may mean you just trying out these different things. So you get exposed to all these different things, which is a great thing. But as I said, I mean, to develop the consistency, you just got to kind of take what's there and jump on the opportunity to go ahead and try these different things. I think when you're new, the one good thing about being new is there's a chance to kind of embrace different techniques, that works best for you, and then kind of be a hybrid of what's been in front of you. As long as you have people that are willing to teach you the right thing. But I want to add one more thing to that, though. One more thing when it comes to learning techniques, especially when you seem to be learning it from different perspectives, get to know the person who's teaching it. See what they're about. See what their beliefs are. See if they're connected to the agency and if they're committed, because that's a good way to understand where their actions or behaviors are coming from. Like I may say people doing two things differently, and it's like, well, I wonder what's the right way. You know what? Let me get to know the person real quick and, see if I can relate to them. Because I will tell you one thing, if you go into this profession with a strong belief, a strong commitment, and you want to do the right thing, you believe in the value behind this profession, you could find people who are like-minded like that, and then go ahead and try to see if at least somewhere in their core values, it's like, you know what? I'm trying to understand that behavior, that practice that you're doing. But having said that, getting to know you, getting to see what you're about, maybe you could tell me the why behind the things that you're doing. That's another thing, So you got people doing things differently. Don't be afraid to ask why. What is automatic? How? You could see, ask them why. Hey, why do you do it this way? And I saw Officer Joe do it this way. Why that approach this way? And let them educate you so you can fill in the gap of where you have to make that decision. So basically 2 practices, there's a gap, ask enough questions to kind of help you build on that decision. But Connie, I'm sure in the medical side too, or you see a lot of people teaching different ways. Now, if you're new and you don't have a comparison, how do you decide what way works best for you?
So, I mean, I think it's all about critical thinking, right? So like there's always going to be multiple perspectives that are brought to the table, right? So like policy is policy, that's the given. But then there is, well, this is what works for me, and here's why, right? You have some people who are willing to share the knowledge, and then you have some who are not. You have some who are still of the mindset like you need to figure it out the way I did, and I think at the end of the day, it's a matter of sometimes trial and error, and sometimes it's really just openly asking the question, like, oh, I was doing it this way before, someone showed me another way. Maybe the benefit, right? Because there are more people who are willing to be helpful than not, right? There are more people who are willing to share their expertise than not. And so when you pose it like a question, not like something accusatory or something like you're probing, but like, hey, you know, I was doing it. I noticed that you do it this way. I learned how to do it this way. Is there a reason why we do it a certain way in this facility or in the prison? Right. And I think that's where we get the clarification, that you ask the questions. And I think we can't avoid asking questions, especially when you're new.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think that like we mentioned, that question that matters. Hey, Dawn Marie, that question that matters is why, especially when you're new and things are ambiguous. You know, I still agree with getting to know the person that's training you, see what their core values are, and kind of see if, you know, at least, you know, a little bit about the person to build some level of credibility as to what they're passing down. But you're right. You know, you're new. Things are new coming your way. Now, there's a couple of good questions here. I want to go all the way back up if I can to, and I'll go with Russ first. Let me just move this up for a second, because the first question was from Dante Edwards that I want to get. And I'm hoping I didn't lose it. I marked it, but I can't find it. Dante Edwards asked about, I think it was dealing with haters, and it kind of crosses into what we got here. Let me just see if I could find it, because I don't want to. So guys, let me just give me 1 second, because I did mark it, but I don't know why it's not. Right here, Dante Edmonds. Granted, everyone on the panel in reference to the FDO promotion. Congratulations, Sean. Hey, congratulations, Sean's on that. To the member, my question to the panel: what is your take on haters and envious colleagues? What do you got, Russ?
Yeah, it's almost like I've dealt with this in the past. Haters, I like to view them as this. I like to view them as speed bumps, right? They might slow me down, but I'm just going to roll right over them if I need to. It's unfortunate that in our profession that there's a lot of people out there that just want to be oppositional with what you're trying to do. And it can be the type of opposition where it's everything from just saying, you know, something smug or snide. I just went through an instance this past week. Oops. You get out of here. This past week with, you know, some people were asking about, you know, hazing. And I put my 2 cents worth in and said, you know, that's not something we should be doing. And then people, of course, they try and rephrase it. Oh, it's just, you know, joking around. It's just a prank here and there. Said, no, what we were talking about is we were talking about hazing. It's unprofessional. It's antithetical. And then someone else tried to chime in and said, well, we have to weed out the bad ones. So, well, that's not really up to you, because my experience on this has been that it actually is erosive to, you know, good teamwork. It's erosive to, you know, having that family type of atmosphere, or at least, you know, some type of brotherly or sisterly love between us, where we're willing to go that extra mile. And so sometimes then just because you express something a little bit differently, because you have a different take on a subject, then you get roundly attacked. And that's exactly what happened to me. People just coming after me because I expressed a difference of opinion from what they were used to. And so I think that sometimes the haters are just that, where it's just at that level that they're oppositional. At other times, I've experienced it where, you know, they've actually, you know, attacked me from behind and, you know, tried to stab me figuratively, not literally. But we just have to try and do everything we can to make those people as powerless as possible, and try and raise up people in their stead that are going to step forward and actually put their nose to the grindstone and work the things that need to be worked inside your unit, inside your department, inside your facility, and make those people go by the wayside. You know, I had a lieutenant who worked at the joint that I was at last when I was working for CDCR, and this guy was so territorial that he pushed everybody that was really trying to attack and really get involved in the gang suppression network. And he only wanted his select few officers involved in that. And what ended up happening is nobody would do anything on the gang front anymore. Why should I share information about what's going on when I'm being cut out. I'm not being given the training. I'm not even asked to step forward and try and help. And he was one of those guys. He was just always a hater. He wanted his own little fiefdom, and it was all about him. You just can't be that way in corrections. There's generally enough of everything to go around, and there's nothing wrong with helping someone achieve even, better results than you've got. What does it say about someone who has to put someone else down in order to try and prop themselves up and make themselves look good? So there's a lot more that I could unpack there, because I've been targeted a lot of times under a lot of different circumstances in my career. But maybe sometime we'll just do a whole show on nothing but the hatred. A good friend of mine, my last real true partner in the department, Kenny Gonzalez, he was always talking about the haters and about how they just were always there to try and tear something down rather than build something up. And so it's much harder to establish and build things in corrections than it is to tear things down. And you're going to get known for either one.
Yeah, before Connie, I just want to mention something. Who is it? Maybe Stephen Covey, the one that says, like, basically you got the stimulus and then you got your reaction to that stimulus. And in that middle is your freedom of choice. So basically you are in control of how you react. And again, that deals with attitude and effort. But I've dealt with some haters too. And I'll tell you from my position after Connie goes, but I'll tell you where I dealt with some haters and what it did to me. And then eventually what I had to do for myself. But Connie, I'm sure you've dealt with them too. What would be your advice?
So for me, I feel like just a little twist on the haters is that sometimes the haters are giving you the fuel you need to kick things up a notch, right? There's a level of, I guess, hateration that may come that could either push you, like deter you from doing what you need to do, or that can motivate you to do better. I had read one place, never ignore the naysayers, right? Because the naysayers, as much as we want them to shut up, sometimes they're saying things that we need to hear that others are being too polite to say. And so there's a moment of reflection, right? Like you hear something a hater has to say, is there some truth to this? Am I lacking self-awareness and I don't even see what the hater is seeing, right? And if I can clearly rule it out, then it's like, oh, they're just hating, and you move on, right? I've learned to not take those things personal, because at the end of the day, anytime you are doing something that others wish they could have done, or could be envious of you for whatever reason, like that means you're already in a good space, right? And so I think to an extent there is, here's the hater who's trying to bring me down, who's trying to, sully my name, whatever the thing is that the hater is doing. And I think to Ganji's point about choice, you have a decision. How are you going to take that information that the hater has shared, and what are you going to do with it, right? Is that something you're going to internalize and personalize, or is that something you're going to look at, it either matters or it doesn't matter, and you move on from there? You decide to use it the way you want to use it. But I don't think a hater has no power unless you give it to them.
Yeah, it also, again, going back to Stephen Covey, it also where your center is. I mean, you got to realize something. We get influenced by the outside all the time, and we wind up devaluing ourselves because of how we feel others see us, when it really doesn't matter. What matters is you have to have strength in yourself to know that what they say really doesn't matter. So the funny thing is, it's really more about self-awareness and inner self-confidence that helps you deal with the haters, because the haters, they attack what they perceive are vulnerabilities, and they perceive it when you react. So how you react gives them what they need, or the ammo to keep doing it. So, you got to be able to be strong enough in yourself to be able to resist the haters. If you're weak, then the haters win. I mean, it's right off the bat. Now, for me, I jumped from sergeant to administration. So trust and believe, there could have been some people that weren't happy with that because you're jumping the hierarchy, and of course, they'll question your journey up. How'd you do? Not realizing that there was hard work involved, and still is. But having said that, I just realized after a while, because here's the funny thing: when I got into the position, and they were coming after me, I wasn't angry. I started doubting myself because of them. So it's funny because a lot of people think that the haters make you angry and they force you to react in a certain way. But for me, it was different. Yeah, great book, 7 Habits. But for me, because I was new in the position, and like all positions, you're new when you're vulnerable, the timing of the attacks mattered. I didn't have time to be angry. I didn't have the confidence to even be angry and defend my position. I was doubtful. I mean, these people were hitting things that made me doubt my ability to do the job. But then what happened was, I was surrounded by really good people that knew the job. I connected to them. I saw what they did, and I kind of envied them in that position because it's like, man, I wish one day I can do that. But then I realized something. When they started complimenting me and the stuff that I was doing, I had to ask myself, whose words have more value? Because I can't doubt myself because of these haters, but then feel good because I got people here that are actually good, that know the job and know what I'm about, and they're feeding me with really good information to keep me moving forward and keep me motivated. So I have to make a decision at that moment. Who am I going to allow into my life to make me better? Because at this point, you can't have both. You got to let go of one. And it was an easy choice. If I'm to embrace the good that's coming my way from these people I highly respect, then I got to say goodbye to these assholes down here who are literally just hate. And the sad thing is if I allow that in while they're telling me the good, sad thing is the negative overpowers the positive. So I'm not taking that. No matter how good the compliment is, I'm not embracing it because I'm getting the negative from here. So for my own benefit, I cut this off. This is done. I'm done. I'm done. And then I move forward. But here's the good thing, guys. I also realized another thing too. When I had the haters, I stopped justifying myself. That's key. Sometimes the haters make you want to justify your position. Stop. You don't have to. If you're confident in yourself, you don't have to justify shit to anyone. You don't. You spend most of our time justifying shit to people that don't matter, who are going to just shoot it down anyway. So I guess the big thing is you got to know where you're going to build your confidence from, because confidence is external. Are you going to build it from the assholes down here, or are you going to build it from the people that are trying to lift you up? But whatever you make decision you make, hopefully it's the latter, you got to let go of the other. So you can't embrace the good if you got this negative, because that negative will be overpowering. I got a great question here. I'll go with Russ first. I love this question, and it was from I started. Hold on, guys. I do hit a star, and then the star is supposed to highlight so I can easily find it. But there was a question that was. Oh, here it goes. What would you look for in a rookie that points to their future success? Also, what is the best motivation to become a correctional officer? So let's do it two ways. So for Russ, we'll do the officer side, me and you, but I thought maybe Connie could touch in on the medical side or on the civilian side. So Russ, can you answer both those questions at all real quick?
Yeah. Can you read it out loud? This one's down in the.
What would you look for? It's 2 parts. What would you look for in a rookie that points to their future success? And also, what is the best motivation to become a correctional officer? So why don't we start with what's the best motivation to become a correctional officer, and then go with what would you look at as a rookie to identify future success?
I think that it's a little too easy to just try and say, hey, what is the best motivation to become a correctional officer? I will say that probably when I started, my motivation was probably skewed a little bit because I was much more focused on the fact that I needed a job, I needed the money, I needed to make it work. And so those were the things I was looking at. Does that mean that my motivation was wrong? No, it was just kind of, I was just kind of being pragmatic because that's where I was in my life at the time. I also, though, recognized in myself that that I wanted to do something with regards to public service. My father had been a captain in California Department of Forestry, and I had an opportunity to follow that road. But for me, that was the wrong road because I never felt like I was going to get a chance to be myself, to be my own person. I was going to get contrasted against, what my father had done before me, and I was never going to be sure that what I achieved was something that I achieved in and of myself, as opposed to some nepotism, no matter how minor it might be. So that's where I started. But that thing about public service came back around a lot in my mind after that. And I started looking at, well, who is really good at doing this job? Who is the person who, can stand there, in the gap and keep the public safe, and make sure that we also keep staff safe, and make sure that we also keep the inmates safe, because that's kind of the three-pronged approach that we really have in corrections. And I realized, hey, I am doing it. I'm this guy. I am the one, who's able to, develop some of my talent and to get motivated to get not just, kind of good at it, but at least in my estimation, kind of really good at it. And then later, even after retiring and everything else, to try and find ways to make it easier for those that are coming after me by giving them some good training like this, and to be able to pipe up and say, what is it that's great about this this particular profession? And so the one really great thing about this profession to me is not very many people can do it. Almost nobody can do it well, and yet it's an absolute necessity for the system that we have and for the public's safety. And so, this being, we haven't mentioned it yet, but, talking about Correctional Officer Week, my hat's off to each and every person out there that, stands watch and makes my neighborhood a little bit safer each day in just that way, so that I don't have to, because I've done it before in the past for the public in the past before. And so I recognize the the sacrifices that we make, and the worry that we go through, and the anxiety that we have over our safety, sometimes the safety of our family. And it's not easy, and it's made hard by things like haters. It's made hard by things sometimes like administrators that or administrations that don't care. And yet, through all of that, and especially what I saw many of my brothers and sisters go through, that I personally didn't have to, with regards to what we did during COVID, y'all are an amazing bunch. Absolutely. So
Yeah,
I don't know if I answered the questions there.
No, you
Maybe
did.
I got.
And Nurses Week, Teachers Week.
Yes.
And it's funny, all those professions are found within corrections.
Yes.
Hey, Connie, again, new staff, what would be a good thing to motivate them in? And what do you look for to see if someone has the chance to be successful? And give me a second, guys. I'm going to get some water real quick. I ran out of water. So
Sure.
I'll have you lead the show for a second.
I mean, for me, I'm looking for that staff person who's willing to take the initiative, right? Who's and not without direction, right? Like who's thoughtful about the job, about the approach, and they're methodical, right? They are going to take the initiative to do certain things. They're going to ask questions. They're going to be seeking out guidance. If they see something that seems odd or off, they're looking to fix it. How do I fix it? How do I present the solution to whatever the thing is? I think for me, it's really been a matter of there's great people who walk through the door all the time. But how do we cultivate that greatness? How do we, you know, allow them to see the value that they're bringing, but the value in themselves, right? Because all too often, they come into the system and it's kind of, here's all the stuff, right? Here's all the tasks that they have to do. And while, yes, it's important for them to understand their roles and understand the task at hand, I think it's also important to acknowledge the value that they're walking in with. So, from the medical lens, when I have a nurse who comes in who has a specialty, right? Like that's like a heaven sent, right? That this nurse did dialysis outside, or we have a nurse who specializes in hospice care, or we have a nurse who's really good with who is also a phlebotomist, right? Because not all nurses can find your veins, right? So, but when we have some staff who come in with like extra skills and we can acknowledge that, I think those are ways that you can see up front that this person's going to have a great career, or they are going to see success in whatever they do because they're putting themselves in a position to be of service. They're putting themselves.
Sorry, I got you in the background there. I was listening. I was trying to share the video out. Hey, I want to, we have a few questions, but I want to answer the thing with the deaf inmate real quick, more of a technical question. So when we have a deaf inmate, there's multiple departments that are involved when dealing with a deaf inmate. So what you're going to have is medical, who once there's a reason to believe the inmate's deaf, maybe they somehow are able to tell you, or maybe you figure it out on your own. Medical will go ahead and they should put that person on a list that, in my experience, would go to the social service department, because now there's an ADA requirement. We have to make sure that we're able to assist that inmate in all their needs. So basically, once there's that social services at this point confirms that the inmate's deaf, what they'll do is they'll put a sign on the inmate's door that lets that staff know that you do have an inmate that's deaf. They also may partner the inmate with another inmate, depending on safety and security. That's not always done, but for the most part, an inmate that's to assist that hard of hearing inmate. And they also put a special light inside the unit as well, inside the cell. So what happens is, or right outside the cell, it can go either way depending on what level of status it is. But if there's a concern, whatever it is, when that inmate is needed, the officer can hit a button and the light flashes and the inmate is able to pick up on the light. But again, it's usually good to have an inmate who, can assist that inmate if the facility allows that, depending on the status of the inmate. But technically, it's really a connection of multiple departments working together to make sure staff knows, and then making sure we comply with ADA. We also tell education as well. Education may have to prepare certain things to make sure that we give this inmate whatever it is that they're supposed to have, because the last thing you want to do is, when you notice an inmate has a disability, you got to get all on. We got to make sure that they get whatever they're supposed to get. So again, medical and social services kind of confirm it to comply with ADA. They put something on the door that lets staff know you have a deaf inmate, but they do some light or something that could also work so the inmate can see the light in case there's a concern. A cellmate who can assist, and then just and staff has to also be a little bit more sometimes tolerant, because sometimes you've had officers that they just don't take into account that the inmate can't hear them. But don't get me wrong, sometimes that's played too a little bit. But for the most part, medical's able to confirm an inmate if they're deaf. So it's very hard for an inmate to play that, because they're able to do tests, and the inmate has to go through that test in order to qualify for those components. So again, and they could tell you how much loss. Same thing with eyesight, whatever the disability is. I want to answer that question first with the rookie. So I'll do it quick because we got a few more questions real quick. Is, for me, motivation has to be something that I still have to say this connects to a higher purpose, something that has some level of service connected to it, because corrections is the service business, whether you're with the inmates, the public, however you want to view it. There is no greater service profession than what we do in corrections. So you have to have that want to do something good, and it has to be a non-selfish want. I think that's a great motivation. So nothing external, not money, not benefits, that. And there has to be something that helps you when you go through those hard times. So you can't have something superficial and controlled by somebody else. It has to be something that's internal. So when you go through those rough times, you can look back inside and kind of, fight forward, because it's worth it. You're doing it for you. You're doing it for something better than yourself, a greater picture. Other than that, for success, I'm going to do something real superficial. I look at who they hang out with right from day one, because you are who you hang out with. You attract people just like yourself. I don't care what everybody says. You're hanging out with bad people when you want to point to everyone else. Yeah, but you're hanging out with them. It's just a reflection. I want to know who you're hanging out with. How serious they take their job. What's their reasoning behind the job? Are they willing to learn? Are they willing to grow? I mean, that's the key too. I mean, do they listen? Or do they come in with that? I want to be recognized. You get people that are new that instead of them want to listen, they want to show off everything and say, hey, it's not your time to show off right now. It's your time to shut up and learn. I don't care that you want to come in and start telling me how good you are at the job at day one. It's not your time to do that right now. Your time is to shut up and listen so I can share with you my experiences. So I'm looking for people that are humble, that are willing to learn. And there is for me, I'm looking for problem solvers and decision makers. And what I mean by that, even if you're new, I'm not saying you have to know the answer, but you're going to try to find it. And I'm very curious to see how you navigate that. But decision-making, problem solvers, who you hang out with. I think that's great signs. Are you willing to learn? Okay, so let's see. This is a good one. I got a few stars up here. We did the deaf one. I hope the deaf one answered your questions. Just let me know, Sean, and this has. So, panel, what's your take on poisoning staff who aim at not serving their facility an oath? It's mainly about money and tearing staff apart. So kind of similar, but a little bit a little bit different here when it came to serving the facility. So I'll go to Connie first and then Russ. So here's the question, Connie.
Yeah. My take on them is that someone needs to call them out. And I know no one wants to be confrontational, right? Like no one wants to be that person. But I feel like the more that person is able to infect the rest of the team, the rest of the staff, the rest of everybody around them, the more harm that's done. So when there's those poisonous staff out there that's just not productive and they're just not doing their part as part of all the stuff that has to be accomplished within a day, like somebody needs to call them out. It's like, hey, listen, why are you saying this right now? Like, here's all the things we're trying to get done, right? And sometimes even just saying, what you're saying is like not productive, right? Or how do you expect us to help us? Right? Because when you're faced with all this stuff, you got the stress of the inmate, the stress of the job, just all the stuff, right? All your responsibilities. And on top of that, I've got this monkey on my back, right? Like, how do you get it off? Right? Sometimes it is just being very direct and letting that person know that what they're doing isn't helping you and you're not interested in hearing it, because it also prevents them from continuing to poison you.
And I will tell you one thing, guys. If I did an article not too long ago for the AJA, talked about people not being connected to the job. And for a while, I was kind of watching videos and I kind of understood, because we're going through this tough time in this profession. And for a while, I kind of fell into that. I get it, not being connected. I mean, could we be doing more? Could we be doing more? Could we be doing more? And then all of a sudden I realized something, and just because I got caught up in it too, was corrections, you have to be connected. because if you're not connected, you're not committed. My biggest concern is when I work with somebody now that says they're not connected to the job, I start questioning, how committed are you? I know this sounds tough, and I want the connection to be a healthy connection, but your connection to this job matters in regards to the work effort that you're going to produce. So if I'm working next to a partner that is just not connected, I don't know if I can trust them 100% with what's needed to do the right thing and to make sure that I'm safe. So when it comes to people that are, I mean, in this question here, I guess people that may break, I think there's different ways of breaking your oath. Not all the time breaking your oath is doing something corrupt. Sometimes it's just not caring, because you made a promise that you were going to care for what you did, for what you do. And now all of a sudden times are a little tough and you broke your, I didn't bring in any contraband, Angie. I didn't break it. No, you broke your promise. You broke your promise on day one that you would give us 110% commitment. Yeah, times are tough. I get it. But at the end of the day, that commitment is not just for the agency. It's for you and for the people around you. So sometimes that breaking the oath may not always be about breaking the law or being overly involved with an inmate. Sometimes it could deal with breaking the promise that even though the agency may be tough on you, I'm next to you and I expect you to follow that. Our lives depend on it. What's your thoughts on that, Russ?
Absolutely. The idea that, well, I think just, looking back for what happens with these so-called poisonous individuals, the haters, if you will, my preferred method is I would just wall them off from what was going on. If they don't have a purpose, if they don't serve me in a way that's going to, get us across the finish line for that day, for that week, for that month, for that year or whatever, cut them out of the process to the largest degree that you can. I liked very much, the idea about, being confrontational. Yeah, none of us want to have to do that, but it's a necessity. I think there's a point at which you have to try and decide, how much you can correct this person. I think you have to decide, if there's any level at which corrective action is going to be helpful. And then, ultimately it's up to, supervisors and managers to figure out if they can fix that person or not. We all know people in the profession that couldn't be fixed. We all know people that, even though that was true, somehow they just remained around. They continued to spread the poison. They continued to make things bad. Many times they even promoted upwards. And most of the time, they stayed the same person that they were. I've seen a couple cases where they actually kind of got better. I don't know how that happened exactly, but I've seen it. But the things that take place within the human experience are remarkable, and I don't think anyone should ever count themselves out with regards towards dealing with a situation like that. We've all had to go through it. And, sometimes you just have to, wait it out until you have a chance to get that person out of there, get yourself out of there into maybe a different assignment or something. But, all hope is not lost. And sometimes you just have to work at forming a coalition of people that are willing to do what they can to mitigate the harm that an individual like that causes.
Yeah, and I got this is another great question, guys, and maybe we could put it on. I'd love to hear Connie's perspective from the medical side on this, but it's from Miss Hayes. And guys, we have about 30 people in here, so that's not bad. So that's 30 people we're helping, hopefully. Oh, guys, real quick, just to let you know, I'm going to do a little, where is it? In case you guys are interested, that's a leadership webinar. That's part one. It's $75. It's on demand. So you basically just go ahead and you email this email here, nassahs22@gmail.com. And it's a 2-hour and 15-minute lecture on the first part of positional leadership. It's actually pretty good. We'll do the second part shortly, but the person I had on won't do shows like this. She'll do shows behind the scenes. So it's information that you're not going to find on this channel because it's a little bit more personal. And I'm bringing in people that won't come on a platform, but they'll come and do the private training. So if you guys are interested, that's the email. And you would just say, I'm interested in that training. And then I'll just go ahead. They'll let me know when you want it. And then I send it your way, the link. And if you miss it, not the end of the world, I'll send it again. I want to mention something. There's a great question here from Miss Hayes. I would love Connie to hit this one first and Russ, but she goes, how was your first incident reaction? At any point, did you ever freeze for a second? And before Connie's, I want you to know something. Sometimes we get hit with things that we just can't put together. So it's not always the first reaction you can freeze at. I mean, it depends on what you're really walking into. But Connie, I would love, I mean, medical, I'm sure you got some crazy stuff, but you know,
I'm like over 20 years, I've had many incident reactions. And I think honestly, you always freeze for a second, right? So it's the registering that this just happened, and then it's the jumping into action, right? So it's kind of like, you know, I always think of the guy who was hanging himself outside of my office in the male bathroom. I was on Rikers at the time, and I was sitting doing my discharge planning. I was still pretty fresh, pretty new. And I was becoming known as the person who was helping people get out, which that wasn't my role. I was providing transitional services. But anyway, the guy came down to use the bathroom, right? Because the bathroom was right across from my office. And when he went in, like I could see out the corner of my eyes, that someone had walked into the bathroom, but I didn't think anything of it. And so, but he didn't close the door, and I was annoyed. So I remember getting up from my desk and walking to the door and thinking I was going to say, could you close the door? Right. But instead he was hanging. And so like, I'm like in shock. But then in that split second, it took me to register. I'm screaming down for the officers to come and cut him down and go through all the motions. But like, you are in shock for a second. I remember thinking like, why would he do this here? You know, of all the places that he could do this, right? Really looking more like a cry for help, because he's in the middle of medical. It's like medical, mental health, a pharmacy. We were all positioned in that clinic that way. And then there is so what next? Like, is this because I was new, I was like, is this something that they do? Like, what is happening here? Like, why is this happening? And you never forget, right? Like, as I'm talking about it now, I remember what he looked like. I remember what he had on. I remember what his body was going through. I remember the officer who came down and was lifting him from his legs. I remember the officer who took the shears out to cut he had used a t-shirt, like he had like shredded the t-shirt long enough that he could hang himself. He kind of made a noose with it. And those are the things that kind of just shake you and shape you, right? Because then it became, I needed to be vigilant, right? I couldn't get caught slipping, because look at the kind of things that could happen, which that's like a lot, you know what I mean? So that was my experience. And there's tons with medical, especially if you're someone who this is not necessarily your area of expertise, right? First coming into facility, I remember walking into a cell where there was like feces all over the wall. And I was like, what's happening in here? Like, and why do I have to be in here? Right. It's just, I remember walking into a cell where there's blood all over the floor. And we're trying to step through because we're trying to help like stabilize this guy. And the cells are so small. So between cameras, custody, medical, and trying to move in these little positions and avoid contamination from all the stuff in the room, there's always something that kind of just throws you off. There is no code that I've been through that is one like it was the day before. The moving parts for each code seems to be different all the time. and the things that you see are always going to be different.
Yeah, and I Miss Hayes' perspective real quick. Obviously, the Monday night quarterbackers, it's tough because they have all the information already. So in their
Right.
mind, the decision comes a lot quicker. So I think part of the freeze is you trying to piece together what you're going into.
Yes.
Again, there's always a fair balance, and maybe I love what Connie said in partnership. Maybe Russ could also add is there's always that balance, Russ, of controlling your entrance, but not to the point where you don't do anything. You know, we had a video way back when where it took a lot of people a good amount of time to respond, and what the public didn't realize was like, yo, it's not safe to respond. You know, so, yeah, and sometimes it's hard for us to sit there, but I think the hardest thing to do, to be honest with you, is actually not stopping yourself from going in when it's not appropriate. I mean, I have seen people that have gotten in trouble because the impulse to save a life or the impulse to get involved actually made matters worse. So I don't think the stopping for a second is a bad thing, because you kind of figure out what's happening and you're not going so impulsively in and being another liability. But I think it does become a point where you got to also start to motivate yourself forward. But Russ, what's your thoughts? Where's the balance in that?
Okay. First off, there's a lot of different things to unpack here when we start talking about subjects like this. The first of which, one of the things that I actually have a video out there somewhere. I can't remember exactly which venue it's on right now, but I talk in it a lot about the physiology of what happens to you when you respond to something like this. And I talk a lot about it in it. How do you teach officers to not freeze up? How do you teach them not to hesitate? And fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, part of the problem that we go through is we have a code that we have to adhere to. We have to look after people's rights. We have to look at what the law says. We have to know what statutory law says. We have to know policy. We have to know procedure, and we have to ultimately know what's safe. All of those conditions can cause us to hesitate, whether we like it or not, especially if we're not clear on what the exact extent of the use of force that we can do at that moment, might say within the bounds of what we're taught, what we learned in the academy, etc. The other thing that goes on, though, the physiological part of it, your body starts to shut down in certain ways. There's basically, you've got, you can fight, or you can flee, or you can faint, or you can crawl into the fetal position, the four F's, as I call them. And the only one that really matters is that you should be able to fight, or you should be able to do, that tactical retreat. I talk in this particular video, I talk about, the first thing that you lose when your body starts to react to things as your heart rate starts to increase. And one of the reasons why you should be out there doing cardio all the time is you get much up around, 100 heartbeats. And the first thing that you lose is that whole, fine motor skills. Well, if you're out there on a transport, what's the big fine motor skill that you need if something really goes bad? It's your trigger finger, right? You're not going to have control over that if you don't have good control over your own bodily processes, because you've been training for them. And all of those things that you can experience, things like auditory exclusion, where you start to lose your hearing. You can't respond to things on the radio. Maybe you don't hear someone running up behind you that's going to hit you. So before I get too far, completely off in left field here, let me come back to the part where I talk about hesitation more, rather than everything else that's in this particular video. But the thing about hesitation is you have to know what you need to do in order to pop the clutch. And so if you want to know how not to hesitate, the main thing is you have to take an action. One action will always daisy chain into another action or a reaction as you go along. So the thing that I always tell, especially the young officers, get to know exactly what it is you're going to do first. What are you going to do? Maybe you're going to take a step forward, right? Maybe you're going to take a step backward. Maybe you're going to key your radio and give out some information. Maybe you're going to get ready to deploy your baton. Maybe you're going to get ready to deploy your pepper spray. And that action will allow you to get into another action so that you don't suffer that type of hesitation. And I always call that popping the clutch, because now you have an actual action that you can initiate without having to plan something all the way through. And that's how we actually get past that point of being hesitant in certain situations. Eventually, as you start to get to things, and you start to deal with more and more incidents, it starts to feel more natural. It becomes more natural. The first thing that you start to do is you give that command, hey, get down, and it comes automatically. But you don't want to get stuck in the OODA loop where that's all you're doing and you're only giving commands. You have to progress through everything in order. And that's another thing that I talk about in that particular video, I think, is the OODA loop, about how you start to make decisions under stress, especially the type of stress where it's physiological and you have to deal with those other things. Did I get too far off subject there?
No. And Don, I got to work. Oh, great advice. Obviously, everybody's loving your advice, both Connie and Russell. Thank you for adding value. Don, I'm going to try to start doing this on a regular basis. I'm going to commit to it. I may start doing Friday nights. I got a little disenfranchised because not everybody's getting the alerts. But again, we had 30 people in the room. I'm happy with just that. One day I tried to do it and I had everybody coming in, not getting the alerts. And I got a little mad at YouTube and I kind of stayed away. But you know what? At the end of the day, when we do a live dialogue, the dialogue is driven by you guys. So when we do a live dialogue, we don't really have topics in mind. We want to get it from you. So when we don't have an audience in here, it defeats the purpose of being live. I'd rather just do a video and then put it up there. So we're going to try and build some consistency, but it would be great if you guys could maybe share it out to your people and let them know that we're going to try to be consistent with doing a show every Friday night live. I may even do one tomorrow, depending on how things work. And happy Mother's Day. I have two more questions, and I think we can kind of start to wrap it up. The one question that I don't want to miss was that's the second one, I think. Hold on. Real quick, before I answer that question, my thought about the hesitation too, guys. Again, just to have food for thought, take note of the questions you're asking yourself in your head too. Make sure they're the questions that motivate you to do the right thing and not questions that stop you. A big thing about what we do in efforts to move forward, like Connie and Russ said, are the questions that are in our own heads. We have to be very wary of the questions that we ask ourselves. Are they questions that motivate us forward, or are they questions that motivate us backwards? And again, be very wary of that inner dialogue, because that's only something that you know. So if you happen to freeze and there was something in you that wanted to do something, you really did freeze, you should ask yourself at that moment, what was going on in your head? What stopped you? What was it? What was preventing you from doing what was right? Now, this is a unique question, maybe a bit controversial, but I want to answer that, and we got one more. This comes from Country Gaming. What about the guys who respond to a situation where the inmate's having a medical episode, you have to fight them, and they die later at the hospital through no fault of your own? I want to go first on something real quick, and then we can kick back. I just want to say something that came to my mind. So I worked in facilities where inmates, diabetic, and they would have episodes, and they wouldn't eat right, and then all of a sudden they had the episode of the one that's really the danger is the high sugar, because they don't know where they're at and they start fighting everyone. So what happened is we would get in this routine of this person just being foolish every night, eating something they shouldn't be eating, and like by midnight, we got to get this person to medical because their sugar number is high. So we put an alert on the door to let people know, and it wasn't a HIPAA violation, just that there was a medical concern. We didn't say specifically what it was, but we let staff know to be very wary when you go into this cell, because the person may look like they're fighting you back, but they're not. They're sick. Now, granted, you still have a right to protect yourself, so I'm not saying that, but just bear with me. Once that's on the door, You're being judged the moment you enter. The moment you enter, because now you've been told that this person has an illness, and now it kind of puts some liability. So when that would happen, I would automatically get my people in protective gear, because we're going to be preparing to take some hits. But we also have to be wary that this is a guy that is sick. He's diabetic. And at the end of the day, we don't want to get a guy that's, we don't want to beat the hell out of this guy. So you're going to protect your staff as much as you can, because this is going to be a concern. You got to go in there, try to talk to the person. But here's another thing too. You got to get that person to medical, because you're not giving him that shot in his cell, because that's dangerous. We'll be injecting ourselves. So what happens here is it's a tough call. But what you're going to do is you're going to try to talk to the individual. I mean, even if you want to record it, that's always a good effort, because it could be a cell extraction. Because, again, the guy may not be wanting to come out because he's sick. But, again, it may not be a cell extraction, because you should be calling the medical code. So that should be able to alleviate the cell extraction policy and go in based on the medical code. But having said that, it's still a medical code. So make it known before you go in, especially if you're a supervisor. I got a medical. So now we all know what we're dealing with. Then what you do is, I know this guy's going to be volatile, guys. You tell the team, guys, this is what we're going on. I want to suit it up, but I want us to be wary that this is strictly to restrain the guy, put him in a chair, whatever we got to do, and bring him over. Bring him over to medical. But I will tell you one thing. Yes, you do have a right to protect yourself. I'm not saying that. If it does get out of hand and there's a weapon or something, then yeah, you got to do what you got to do, and you're able to justify it. But remember something. Once it's known that it's a medical concern, you can no longer deny the fact that you went in there to help the guy go through a medical concern, and then you wind up killing him, which winds up defeating what the initial objective was, which was to save that person's life. And I notice you get a lot of that when it's the high end of the sugar, at least for the people that are diabetic, or even some cases, they're drunk, and we know that they're drunk. But that's a lot different. Yeah, seizures. But who wants to go first with them? Russ and then Connie? Go ahead, Russ.
Yeah. So can you repeat what that exact question was?
Yeah, it came from Country Gaming, and I just had it. Hold on. Wait. I have it because Country Gaming right here. What about the guys who respond to a situation where the inmate's having a medical episode? You have to fight them, and they die later at the hospital through no fault of your own.
Okay, so I want to repeat. Want to tackle that from a couple different angles. First of all, sometimes when these things occur, we don't know that it's a medical issue. Usually in a jail or prison, we may have a little better idea about it. The other thing that tends to happen a lot, though, is you'll see, especially inmates that are brought in off the street to a jail, less so in the prison. They've been out there, they've been, fighting with officers, and they've exerted a great deal of effort. And then it leads to a condition that's kind of generalized. That's called excited delirium. All right. And so when people get into these excited delirium states, sometimes for no apparent reason, all of their physiology just shuts down all at once. There's a lot of different things that, they say contribute to this. One of them can be substances, especially now, maybe not so much with excited delirium, but with the overdoses that we see now that are, fentanyl induced. I mean, it can happen really quickly. Sometimes these guys, they go from 1,000 miles an hour to attacking an officer to dead in a matter of minutes. So what you just have to do is you have to be cognizant of what exactly it is that's going on during your use of force. And by that, I mean, and I've reviewed so many videos on this, is once we get that individual, restrained, it's really incumbent upon us to remove him from anything that can cause that positional asphyxia, especially if we've used a taser on him, or if we've used, any type of chemical agents, OC, that kind of thing, and try and make sure that this individual has, a clear airway. And then, we want to start checking him and making sure that his heartbeat's okay. That's the next thing. We'll make sure that his airway's clear, make sure that he's breathing, make sure that he's got that heartbeat going. Because I see so many times these people, they're taken unawares. They're just not aware that this inmate has gone from 100 miles an hour to a crash almost instantaneously. So my recommendation is that you always stay aware of what's going on in your use of force at that point in time, and that you really go out there and you get some really clear instruction and training on that term excited delirium, and then secondly on positional asphyxia. I have sprayed probably hundreds of people with OC gas, and I can tell you that it's very effective, but it's a little bit scary every time if that person starts having a breathing episode go wrong. Once we spray them and we put handcuffs on them, we can't just leave them there, because they can be put in that position where they're stressed out and they can no longer breathe. You have to roll them upright, and you have to make sure that you take appropriate care for people that you've used force on, sometimes even in the midst of a riot, and it can be very, very difficult to do. Once you put those bracelets on them, you're responsible for them. And don't think that you're not. I've had situations happen where I've sprayed someone, and because we had so much other fighting going on during a riot, that I elected to leave them out of cuffs temporarily, because we weren't going to be able to provide for their safety. So I hope that that's what this individual is talking about. There's a lot to it, because like I said, sometimes in the prison setting, sometimes in the jail setting, we may know more about this person than we would if we just had encountered them on the street. But sometimes inside jail or prison, once again, I've ended up fighting with people who were high on PCP. I have fought with people who were high on K2 or Spice. I've fought with people that were high on methamphetamine. And you may not know at the time that that is indeed the case. And that is the time, especially with methamphetamine and with cocaine, where they have that exaggerated heartbeat, that you can end up accidentally damaging them permanently and killing them. And you didn't mean to, but it's just the way that it went. And that is really frowned on politically in a lot of the things that we do. So I hope that kind of answers it.
Yeah, and just remember something. I got to add on something before I get to Connie real quick. I got to remember, everything has to be justified, not just, you had to justify why you had to take that inmate out. So, what I mean by that is transporting them to medical, whatever it is, because here's the bigger concern too. When you get taken to the courts, the first thing they're going to ask you is, why'd you take him out? Because if he was still in the cell, you wouldn't have gone through all this. There was incident that I had an inmate that had a bad heart problem. I had to go to medical under observation, and the inmate didn't want to go. And the thing is, they're like, well, you're going to extract him and bring him over to medical? No, because he's got a bad heart problem. So now, in an effort to bring him to medical, he dies. It's like, we're not doing that. That's foolish. So then medical would go ahead. They know the guy had to be in the infirmary, so medical would have to adapt and adjust. It's like, hey, if you need to see this guy every day, I'm not going to be able to bring him to you because he's ready to fight. And the problem is, we go in there with 5 of us, which is the protocol, we're going to kill him. So medical would then have to do the tours. So again, you got to be able to justify everything, including taking that inmate out of that cell. And that justification should be literally, I had to take them to medical, or they were in self-harm, or something that people could say, yeah, you had to take them out, because that's the first thing they're going to look at. Why did you take him out? And then how was he handled? Because if you took him out for the wrong reasons, everything else doesn't even matter. So you got to be able to justify why you had to take him out of the cell. And this is a prison setting. We tried to help him. Medical was on the scene. He got aggressive. We had to fight him. Just me and my partner. So again, that's the other thing, the verbiage too. The verbiage, maybe the word fight, I don't know, but the verbiage, when you got an inmate that is sick and they're being resistant, your verbiage even an effort to protect yourself can't come out as aggressive verbiage because you know what you did, but someone else is reading it that all they see is the word fight. They don't care about the context. So having said that, you have to be able to explain that it's a non-aggressive approach. It's a reactive approach.
Yeah. Can I jump in on that a little bit there?
Yeah. What do you got?
Okay. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. The phrasing that we want to do inside all of our reports is going to be that of justification and what I call comportment with what policy and procedure requires. So when you're going to make sure that your report comports with what policy and procedure requires, you want to make sure that you use that exact terminology. What was it that you were doing? Well, it's not that I was fighting him as I was defending myself. In order to defend myself, I ended up having to whatever it was, a wrist lock, an arm bar, application of restraints, OC pepper spray, taser, whatever it is, and you want to use the exact language, I should say exact as much as you can with that language which comports with what your policy and procedure says. So don't phrase things as a fight unless it involves two inmates fighting each other. We're not going in there to fight. We're going in there to stop the aggression. We are going in there to defend someone else's life, to defend our own life, to take that individual into custody. Those are all things that are generally recognized as when we can use force. It's usually, affecting custody, defending someone else, or doing something else that that policy and procedure allows you to do. So just be careful with the phraseology and always fall back on the same phraseology as much as you can with what happens in your policy and procedure. Always phrase it like that. Why did you elect to spray that inmate? Well, I had to spray him to stop him from attacking his cellmate and you can cite it, or you can just use the terminology in there in order to affect custody and to at the same time protect the physical safety of whoever his cellmate was. But always fall back on that.
It's funny that you said the fighting thing, because I remember I had an incident where there was an inmate that assaulted staff, and the results of the case was they downgraded the charge to a fight. And I said that can't be. There's a fight would mean that the staff member was fighting. So you can't downgrade the assault of an inmate to a fight because the staff member is not fighting. So it made us look back at the video and we had to look at something. But hey, Connie, out of curiosity, is someone a threat on the lower end of the diabetes? I mean, I know definitely seen the higher end, but on the lower end when they're kind of like.
So they're not really a threat because they don't have the energy to really be a threat on the lower end. I think with diabetes, you can see altered behavior, high or low. And I think that's the thing that you want to be mindful of, right? Because on the low end, they may seem to be under the influence of something when they're probably not. And on the higher end is where you see more of the aggressive, sort of altered behavior. So that you do see. I think the thing in this conversation that we're having is that when someone's in a medical or mental health crisis, we just have to acknowledge that it is a medical or mental health crisis. Like, yes, we're going to protect ourselves because that's what we need to do, right? But I think the way we approach it through the lens that this is a crisis and this isn't just a behavioral issue is really where I think it will make the difference in the approach. And that's not saying allow this person to be abusive for a lot of staff to be hurt. That's not to say that at all. It's just understanding that there is a level of force that would be appropriate for someone who has medically or mentally decompensated.
Right. And I love that. And Ms. Hayes, when it comes to the verbiage, I mean, you got use of force guidelines, especially in New Jersey, where they would prefer terms like, each type of resistance that an inmate gives you is going to equal to the force that you're going to use. So technically, if you have an inmate that's passively resistant, you're not going to go and do aggressive force on that individual. But if you have an individual that's coming at you in a threatening manner, then that opens up the door for your response. But I think that what you need when it comes to the verbiage is basically how you note the threat, whether they're passive aggressive, passive. I mean, if you look at the AG guidelines, they give you the perfect verbiage, so you're able to note what type of threat you're dealing with, and then let them decide, because it equates to like, you're dealing with this threat, then this is the level of force. But if you don't know that verbiage, or how to spell out when the person becomes a threat, because you can't just say the person's a threat. You have to say why. Well, he was, all of a sudden he started to clench his fist. He started moving towards me in an angry fashion. Jojo said happy anniversary, been together for a year. I mean, the key, that's funny, made me laugh. The key is this, though. That was a good one, Jojo. The key is this. The key is that you have to paint the picture that this individual was a threat, and that at that point you had to do what you had to do. Now, mind you, a threat is different. A threat to me may not be a threat to Russ. A threat to me may not be a threat to Connie, because to some level, there could be some level where they believe that the threat could be subjective. That's why you have to bring consistency to that subjectivity. Because at the end of the day, I have an old guy, and let's say Russ goes against this old guy, and Russ, manhandles the shit out of him, because Russ is 7'2", 490.
Look at that verbiage, Russ.
Yeah.
How do we like that verbiage? You handle the shit out of him.
Yeah.
I'm
manhandle the shit. And the old guy is 90 pounds on deathbed, and Russ beats the crap out of him, and Russ is going to say, well, he was a threat, and people are going to look like, I don't buy that. But then you get like the same guy going against, let's say, me, I'm 115 pounds, which I'm not, but if I was, then, it's like, it's different. So having said that, the consistent verbiage comes from the different ways that we could define that inmate as it relates to our use of force and what they were doing. So there's going to be different terminology of that inmate's behaviors that you can utilize that will then help you decide, well, if this inmate's doing it passive aggressive or passively resistant, then I can't go all out. Like, I'll give you an example. I got an inmate, let's say that I got to get out of the cell. Let's just do it this way. I got an inmate that's got to get out of the cell, right? So I'm trying to motivate the guy to get out of the cell. He's not listening, but he's not fighting me. He's walking away from me, or he's, nah, I'm not doing nothing, blah, 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 but he's not aggressive towards me. I can't really go in full force. He's non-aggressive. He's passive resistant. But then that could shift. At one moment, that guy could turn around and literally say, fuck you, come and get me. And if you get me, I'm going to mess you up. I'm going to hit. Well, now you're different. Now you got threats. You got the verbiage right in play that says, I don't care. Even if you open up the cell door later on, he puts his hands up. I got the words already of what you said. The plan's in motion. We're coming in. But how do you justify it? You justify it by specifying the threat, what they said. And again, at this point, he's no longer passively resistant. He's a threatening assailant. So when you can determine, like, I think what you need, what would help you out is if you could find the proper verbiage that connects to the proper use of force that's utilized. So would you use someone that's passive resistant, and you could clearly see in the video, would you use the same level of force on a passive resistant individual as you would a threatening assailant? No, you wouldn't. So having said that, you got to be able to spell that out. So what I would do is find some consistency in the verbiage of how you are going to go ahead and note what type of threat that is, because there's going to be terms for that. And that is going to equate to what type of force that you're able to use. But if you don't do that, if you don't separate or clearly define those different types of threats, then that's going to be a problem, because, again, no one's going to be able to determine if that was the right use of force, because you haven't clearly made it visible through your reports. But I don't know what type. You didn't tell me. You just said that the inmate refused to go back into his cell, and then you started punching him. What does that mean? No, the inmate turned on you. He's threatening you. What happened here? You gotta spell it out, and your job matters because these reports matter because I'm going to tell you something. They're going to get ripped apart. But the one thing that's tough for them to rip apart is when you use the words that are modeled in the guidelines of the use of force. So if they're using these words to define the different levels of an inmate being a threat, then you put that in your report. And then you use the force that equates to this. You're using it right off the guideline of the Attorney General's office. All right, guys, we have documentation is always important. We're going to kind of close it up. Maybe do one tomorrow night. But Russ, you have anything you'd like to say in closing?
No, I just I've had fun hashing it up. It's always good to come on here and hear what other people's concerns are, because sometimes there are things that that I wasn't exposed to or didn't have knowledge of, and yet trying to work through things and trying to figure out ways to help people in situations like this. I just love talking about the tools of the trade, the tricks of the trade, whatever it is, and I'm down for doing more of these.
Yeah, me too. And guys, we'll talk about the amends program in the future. So basically, that's a collective effort for employee wellness, and then how it directly relates to the population. I forgot to get that. That was the one question that I forgot to. They just told us to use certain words in reports like escort versus yeah. I mean, it's a softer side because of the people that are reading it. But to be honest with you, you don't want to do that to where it looks like you're lying either. I mean, a takedown's a takedown. Be careful when you use that verbiage, because a takedown's a takedown. It's not a escort to the ground.
I have another video out on that where, and some people they laugh about it a lot, and they'll say I assisted the inmate to the ground. No, you didn't. When that happens, and when someone says, "Oh, I assisted him, I guided him to the wall, I guided him to the floor," and then the video comes out, it looks bad. It looks like you're a liar, or it looks like someone told you to say that. Don't use catchphrases. Some of my pet peeves along the way, and before I get too far off topic here again, I've had officers, they always wanted to put things in there using the minimum amount of force. I said, no, you didn't, because there is no way to use the minimum amount of force required, because there's no way to judge that. There's no way to know. You use the amount of force in compliance with law and case law and policy and procedure. So, don't get caught up in what someone else's fantasy about what a good report actually is. Put in there clearly what you did, why you did it, and how it's justified, and how it comports with policy, procedure, state law, federal law, and case law.
Yeah, and guys, remember, before I lose Connie, look at the inmate first, determine what type of threat they are, because you want to be truthful. That's the key. You want to be truthful. So if that inmate was a threat for you, some level of force, then start from the inmate first and write your report based on what that inmate made you had to do. Remember, guys, you're reacting to what that inmate did. So you don't have to lie when the inmate's being aggressive and say, I gently took. No, the inmate was an assailing threat, blah, 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 blah. So in an effort to protect myself or my team, these are the actions I took, and again, they look at where the inmate was, and that will relate to the actions that were needed. Not the other. I have an assailant threat, but I gently took him to the ground. Makes no sense. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't. And then when you see the video, it's like, no, an aggressive inmate, we aggressively responded back. I'm sorry. It just be able to document that threat and, prove it. That writing matters. Connie, what's your closing thoughts before you fall asleep? Wake up.
Listen, I enjoy doing these. I mean, I struggle staying awake just in general. I like it in this more mature stage of my life.
What does that mean?
I am usually in bed between 9:30 and 10 o'clock. So to still be up and talking with you guys after midnight is like, oh my gosh. But I love it. I enjoy, I think, seeing the perspective of others, being able to sort of follow the chat to see some of the approaches that others are taking. And I think it's the journey of learning, right? Because people are also looking at corrections from the lens of what happens in other states, right? And so like I like to hear sort of what people are doing, or other countries even, because we got Canada represented, we've always got others representing here. And so as long as I can be of value in these conversations, I'm always down for it.
What is that? Of course, you're always of value.
Russ, you got a prison smile?
That's what someone said. Russ, you're muted there, Russ, but that's what someone just said. They said you got a Russ, you could unmute. You got a prison smile. I don't know what that means.
I don't know I want to know what it means, though. What does that mean?
Oh, and it goes along with his 70 porns mustache. Damn, Eric.
Oh my God.
But Alicia sends love. Chad Ross said, "Thank you for doing these videos. I would love to hear more about report writing. I know I need help." Hey, so I do have some videos out there if you guys want to check them out on report writing. I think me and Russ could do something a little bit more specific because that video is a few years old, but it does give some good basics. So look up report writing Tier Talk. There's 2 videos on that, but those were years ago.
Big one also on documentation.
Yeah. Oh yeah, guys, just put documentation Tier Talk. That's like every episode. But I think what we could do now is I could show you stuff from like I can have a use of force expert on partnered with Russ, and we could show you how we look at the guidelines. And then we model our reports based on what the guideline, we use the verbiage of the guidelines. So I want you guys to remember that. Know your policies, know those guidelines that govern your use of force, and try to use the exact verbiage of those guidelines. So however they define the aggressor, use the same verbiage, because it's black and white that way, but know your AG guidelines for use of force. Guys, this was great. We'll try to do them again. Again, if you could share it out, guys, because YouTube ain't doing it. I would love to have a bigger audience just to share more knowledge. I got the leadership course available. That's $75 if you're interested. And I appreciate that, Chad. The leadership course got some good information on it. Where is it? Right here. It's available. Let me just put it back where. Let me get rid of this real quick. It's available through let me give you the email on that. Right here, that's the email, nassahs22@gmail.com. It's 2 hours and something minutes, 2 hours and 15 minutes. I think you guys will truly enjoy it. And other than that, guys, that's stuff that I can't put on the channel because, one, the person doing it doesn't do the public platforms, and we share stuff that we wouldn't share on a public platform. As always, guys, the show is Tier Talk. Love you guys, and stay safe.